So we will come to our area. See, we can have 4 kind of orbits. You cut a cone or a double cone. So we can, that is how we introduce to our students a circle, ellipse, parabola, or hyperbola. These are all orbits we need. And when they study the engineering drawing, then also these are needed there for them. So a right cone is a very good example for them. So now two-body problem. This is the where we start our area. Where we know the position and velocity of a mass in space at a particular time. Now to find the position and velocity at future times is the two-body problem. Now position is represented by the coordinates in three-dimensional space by x, y, z, and velocity is represented by x dot, y dot, z dot, dx by dt, dy by dt, dz by dt. These 6 components uniquely define a point in space in a coordinate system. And a convenient interpretation equivalent to the position velocity is by the orbital elements that we'll see. Because we'll see why we need the other coordinate system. Now the orbital elements are the 6 orbital elements are the semi-major axis, eccentricity, inclination, right ascension of ascending node, argument of perigee, and the Epoch time, and location within the orbit. We can define by a fast variable, true anomaly. True anomaly is measured from the focus, and either the eccentric anomaly, which is measured from the center. But true anomaly is the one which mostly we use. But many times the eccentric anomaly helps us when we do the mathematics. Now the orbital elements A and E and I, theta, semi-major axis, eccentricity, and true anomaly, we can define. You see the ellipse. So you see the focus. If it is a satellite of Earth, you can see the Earth at the center of the Earth at the one of the focus of the ellipse. And true anomaly is measured from there. Perigee is the minimum distance from the center of the Earth, and apogee is the maximum distance. And semi-major axis is the ellipse, half of the major axis. So that is how your A, E, and theta true anomaly we can define. And E can be defined in terms of the semi-major axis and the semi-minor axis, which we anyway teach them in our coordinate geometry when we teach the students. Now the distance of the Earth from Sun center is here we call, when we take all the planets around Sun, we call them perihelion and aphelion. Farthest is aphelion and the nearest is the perihelion. And in case of the Earth, G is for geo, so G is for Earth. So perigee and apogee, minimum and maximum distance. So this figure, very clearly tells these names. Now orbital inclination we can see there. The orbital inclination is, if the inclination is between 0 and 90, they are either the direct orbit or the prograde orbits, we call them. And if the inclination is 0, they are equatorial orbits. All orbits are useful. Different kind of orbits are useful for space missions. And I is equal to 90, that's called a polar orbit, passes through the plane will pass through the pole of the Earth. And retrograde orbits are the one where the inclination is between 0 and 180. The inclination can change only from 0 to 180. It cannot go from 0 to 360. So we have that advantage. Only 2 quadrants we need to calculate. Now this is again the x-axis is passing through the vernal equinox, and vernal equinox is, that simplest definition is when Sun comes on the Earth equator, and that is on 20th of March. And then the z-axis passes through the pole of the Earth, and y-axis makes a right-handed coordinate system. So this is how our right-handed coordinate system is defined, and it is fixed with respect to the stars. Though everything is moving, we are moving around Sun, Sun is also moving. All our solar system is moving with respect to stars. But we have a fixed coordinate system. This is a geocentric coordinate system. X-axis will passes through the vernal equinox, Z-axis through the North Pole, and Y-axis makes a right-handed coordinate system. The motion of vernal equinox has a steady precession rate with a period of 26,000 years. So it's not fixed because it is also, Earth also gets attracted by other planets, Sun, Moon, and other. So that effect will be there. There are also variations due to Moon's influence, a period of around 18.6 years. The long-term variations are known as precession, and the short-term variations are known as nutation. Precession are basically from Sun attraction, and the short periodic variations are with Moon attraction. So geocentric coordinate system, and this is a coordinate system in general we use, inertial coordinate system, all fixed with respect to star. We then call as sidereal. So this is the orbital elements, we can define them. You see capital omega is in the XY plane or Earth's equatorial plane. And then the small omega argument of perigee is in the orbital plane. True anomaly is from the focus, that is in the orbital plane. And radial vector R and V, if from the center of the Earth, when we measure radial vector, and then at that point we have a velocity vector. So these R and V will be known to us. And then we need to calculate all the other 6 orbital parameters. So that is a task for us to calculate. And in that, what happens is here R and V will, even if you go very neighborhood, all components will change. X, Y, Z. If you are not going in the same plane, you are going in a 3-dimensional space. A slight movement will change all your 6 components. Whereas in case of two-body problem, when no perturbations are taken, all other 5 parameters will not change, except the theta only will change. Only the true anomaly will change. So that is the advantage we have in working with the orbital elements. And that's why we teach our students the conversion from the radial distance and the velocity vector and the radial vector to the orbital elements. And this is the book, which I told, and which Dr. Rajiv Agarwal has already downloaded, and he is very kind to give to me a copy of that 4th edition. I have not fully gone through, but it contains many more things. So these articles are available there, and that is the best book as far as this kind of studies are concerned. Many things are good there in that book. So I recommend that you should also one book, we adopt. When I started my research, I adopted the theory of orbits by Zave, because I was working on restricted 3-body problems. So that book was my you can say like a Bhagavad Gita. So I used to read quite a lot. Even then, many things we don't understand when we start in the beginning. But well, gradually we start understanding. And understanding is also a function of our data in our mind, how much we have got base to that area. And gradually when you learn the base, then you start learning things very fast. That is how you become very good in your area of teaching as well as in the research area. See, research helps teaching is also well established. Is because when you do research, your thought process is little different. When you do teaching, your thought process is different. But when you combine both of them, then your thought process is still different. So capital omega, small omega, theta, r we need, and the angular momentum that we will tell r cross v. When we have the radial vector r and the velocity vector, and they are all in the plane of the orbital plane. So h will go. We know that A cross B is a vector which is perpendicular to A and B. So this becomes, H becomes perpendicular to R and V. And if I is the angle between the orbital plane and the XY plane, the same angle which will be between the K axis, the Z axis, and the angular momentum, because the k is perpendicular to xy plane and z is perpendicular to the orbital plane. So the I will become, so that becomes handy for us in calculating the inclination. So again, because to make the understand that very clearly, this figure gives capital omega, small omega, and inclination. These three parameters. So inclination is the angle between the xy plane and the orbital plane, and capital omega is the angle from the x-axis, and where the orbital plane cuts the your xy plane orbit, and that you can say center to when you join to the node ascending. This is called an ascending node. Others, so that will be the capital, and there only capital omega, both in different planes. Capital omega in xy plane, and small omega is in the orbital plane. Now, heliocentric coordinate system also we need when we go to the interplanetary system or sun. We want to use it as the center. So here you can see that x-axis is toward vernal equinox, z-axis perpendicular to the ecliptic, positive to the north, and y-axis complete right-handed system. His center is the origin of the system is centered at sun. And in the geocentric or inertial coordinate system, the center is at the earth. So these normally in our usage, these two systems are commonly utilized. And these are all fixed with respect to stars. Equatorial plane is inclined at an angle of 23.43 degrees with respect to the ecliptic. Ecliptic is the plane in which Earth moves around sun. So this is again the same thing, a good figure where you can see I, small omega, theta, r, and v. So because why I stress on this is because these are important. One should know very clearly what is capital omega, what is small omega, where it comes, and how to calculate. So those things, that's why this. So time zones, we know 24 time zones and Greenwich. And one important is Julian rate, because this number is needed whenever we do calculations in orbital dynamics. We do with respect to a Julian rate. And Julian rate, a simple formula is given over here. It is measured from 1st January 4713 BC. And from noon, it is measured. And Julian starts at noon of universal time. And these are all in universal time. And so Julian, the Greenwich time is called universal time, where whatever Greenwich is the place in England. And with respect to that, we compute our east longitude or west longitudes, etc. There it will be 0. So the place is in England. So this J can be calculated. This is a simple formula we teach our students when we need, because this number is needed when we do the calculations in the interplanetary, or even in the when we want to even the ground trace or the orbits of the satellites also. Julian rate has been recognized, and we need to calculate in terms of Julian rates, and then that goes into your calculations. So these are we see mostly these two formulas from spherical trigonometry, which many times they come in use in our calculations. And here, just to give Greenwich mean time, Greenwich meridian passing through that Greenwich place, and then your local meridian may be there. So the angles, we are towards the east from the Greenwich. So that is how to calculate time, etc. We can use all these basics. Now this figure is important, because these figures we can have the equation from there. We know that from the center to the focus, the distance is a into e. These are all the properties of ellipse. So if semi-major axis A and semi-minor axis is B, then we can calculate the coordinates of the in terms of these parameters. You can see here also you can see this eccentric anomaly measured from the center, and true anomaly, as I told you, the three names are used, either nu or theta or small f. So here nu is used, and then the radial distance is always measured from the focus, and A is the semi-major axis. So Now you can see there cos E when we write there. We can write there x in terms of the theta with little calculations from this figure. We can write in terms of true anomaly, AE plus R cos E divided by A. And then we can write, because theta E is, capital E is also there. So we can utilize that expression also there. And after simplification, we can get cos E in terms of the true anomaly. So this is a relation between eccentric anomaly cos E is equal to E plus cos E divided by 1 plus E cos E. So theta is related, the theta is the true anomaly and E is the eccentric anomaly. So these are the exact equations in terms of the eccentricity, no approximation here. And sine you can again calculate from 1 minus cos square E. So we have this sine and cos E. So these figures help us to calculate those values. I'm not going very into the very detailed from by showing. You can very easily see. You're all experts. So this ellipse, when you know the equation of an ellipse, we know the parametric coordinates. X is equal to A cos E and Y is equal to B sin E. And when we use this and E, we know that 1 minus B square by A square root, and R square is X square plus Y square. And when we substitute the values of in terms of eccentric anomaly from that above equation, parametric equation, and simplify them, then we get the equation, the R is equal to A into 1 minus E. Because these are all very useful when we do our research. When we do our analytical research, these become very useful, or even for calculations, they are very useful. So we have two relations for R. In terms of eccentric anomaly, we have the what we saw last time, A into 1 minus E square upon 1 plus E cos theta. And this is R is equal to A into 1 plus E cos E. You see, the interesting thing here is A and the E is measured from the center. R is measured from the focus. But we have the relation in terms of this. Still we have relation. Yeah. R is measured from the focus, small r, and E is measured from the center of the ellipse. But we have a relation, wonderful relation, A into 1. Because this helps us many times. Because R will come when you do your research. R is coming there, supposing down R cube is there, and you have to expand them. Then this time this expression helps quite a lot to us. We can take there, and E is also there. So higher values of E, one can neglect them, and we have some expressions there. So this is a very useful, and the other one is in terms of the true anomaly. So the first variable is the true anomaly F or theta, and E is the eccentric anomaly. These are all fast variables, and M can be calculated from the mean motion. If mean motion is nothing but mu. Mu is the gravitational constant, and that depends upon the mass of the G is a universal gravitational constant, which is constant, and M is the mass. So supposing for Earth we want to calculate, the mu value is 398600 kilometer cube by second square. So this mean motion, and you want to calculate the time, the how much angle will be from perigee. So that time you give from there, then you will be able to calculate the mean anomaly. But mean anomaly as such, we cannot just like that show in this figure. But this helps, mean anomaly helps us quite a lot because it's related to N, and N is related to semi-major axis. And semi-major axis is related to the period from Kepler's third law. So the orbital period can be calculated by visual observations. Okay, how much a body is taking time. From there, we can easily calculate N, and we can calculate the mean anomaly. And if we know the mean anomaly, then we have the very fundamental equation by Kepler. That equation we will just come to that. So this is the same thing. Again, this same figure. Now, this is a equation. You see, most of them can be derived, but I'm not going for all detailed mathematical calculus. Those who are interested, most of the time things they are given in that book itself, or any other book. You can see Denby book or McKesky book, or you can see there are quite a few more books are there which are basics. They have derived all these things. A.E. Roy book is also good. And then the one more book is there. There are quite a few books are there where the things are there. So I am not going all into the mathematics of all those. So this CK is a very fundamental equation where velocity is related to the radial distance and A. And this is the plus is for the hyperbolic orbits and minus is for the elliptic orbits. So this is and mu is the gravitational constant. Supposing we are taking for Earth satellite, so we use the value of mu for Earth, 398600 kilometer cube by second square. So position in an elliptic orbit, we can find out Ri. If we know eccentric anomaly and E and A, then the first equation R will be given, and otherwise we the second equation A into 1 minus E square upon 1 plus E cos theta, and theta is the true anomaly. And these are the relations in terms of eccentric anomaly is in terms of true anomaly. Similarly, we have true anomaly in terms of eccentric anomaly. Now this is anyway because we have to teach our students. Nowadays students are not so great in terms of mathematics, and sometimes they find difficult which quadrant, what is positive, what is negative. So this figure I have generated for that. So this is to make them understand, okay, because we need the two values will come there. Now that equation, when we want to find the velocity, and we are given the radial distance and the semi-major axis, then we can just substitute those values for Earth satellite 398600, and if the radial distance was 9000 and the semi-major axis was 8000, so what is the velocity at that point where R was 9000? So by this equation we calculate the velocity over there was 6.2257 kilometer per second. It will come in kilometers because we are using that value mu value in terms of kilometer cube by second square. So the unit will be kilometer by second. And if we are using it for some other planet, you can use this equation for anything. Supposing it is a moon satellite, so value of mu for moon is only 4903 point something kilometer cube by second square. It's a small compared to Earth. And if we want to use for Jupiter, which has got a quite large value of mu, and we can use this for even for our planets also. We can then we have to use mu for the sun, and we can still calculate the values whatever we get. Even then we are using Kepler's third law, but velocity can be calculated by this. And here, if we are knowing the velocity and we are knowing these are three variables there, V, R, and A. Any two we know, third we can calculate. So if we know the radial distance and velocity, then we can calculate semi-major axis. If semi-major axis is known and V is known, R can be calculated. Now this is the true anomaly in terms of eccentric anomaly. Those equations we have there, and then the example I have given, if E is given 70 and E is 0.2. Now, since the value came positive, so the cos can go positive in two quadrants, first quadrant or fourth quadrant. So those two values we need to calculate. One is 81.231. The other will be 360 minus, because 360 minus theta is cos theta. So V is this one, and the other one is 278. And sine is also positive, but it can be positive in second quadrant also. Second quadrant is again 180 minus theta, 81.3 we get. But if the values are in some other quadrant, supposing cos was negative, then we have to get the value second quadrant and third quadrant, because cos is negative in second quadrant and third quadrant. And supposing sine is positive, it is positive in first quadrant and second quadrant, then the value will come in second quadrant. And supposing sine is negative and cos is negative, then we will get it cos negative in second quadrant and third quadrant, and sine negative means third quadrant and fourth quadrant. So value goes in third quadrant. So the solution cannot be calculated by only knowing one cos nu. We need to get the values of cos nu as well as sine nu. Then only we will get a unique value. Similarly for the other one, for the E also. If you want to calculate E also from this cos E and sine E, again the same thing. You have to use both the equations. Then only you will get the correct quadrant. So that's why this was that sign was important there. This helps the students to, those who forget, they use this. Now Kepler's equation. It was first delivered by Johannes Kepler in 1609 in chapter 60 of his Astronomia Nova. Now you can imagine how many chapters he wrote there. So Kepler proposed an iterative solution also to the equation, because I'll tell you that the equation has played an important role in classical celestial mechanics. Now for elliptic orbit, this equation is m is equal to E minus E sin E. This is a transcendental equation because it contains trigonometrical function and algebraic functions. E and m are algebraic and sin E is a trigonometric function. And if we know E and capital E and small e, then m calculation is easy. But if we know m and small e, then you cannot calculate. So it gets into an iteration. And there was a book which came nearly some 30 years back, I think, nearly 200 years of Kepler's equation. 200 years of solution of Kepler's equation. And this equation has been solved by, there are so many solutions, maybe hundreds of solutions. And recently I was seeing the reference. One paper has come in Proceedings of Royal Society in 2009 also. So still, when you do, supposing, some of you have done some new areas for using optimization. So even people use whatever the new technique they learn, they try to use it on this equation and see whether there is solution. Because when eccentricity is increasing, iterative solution convergence becomes difficult. And the other one, down one, is the hyperbolic orbit. And this equation is needed because m can be calculated from the orbital period, as I told you. If you know orbital period, you can calculate the semi-major axis, and from there you can calculate the mean anomaly, because mean anomaly is n into t minus tau. But eccentric anomaly calculation is this is an exact equation. Some of the great mathematicians said that in 17th century, this was the find of the century. Some people attributed this equation to Kepler, 1609. So they said in 17th century, this was the find of the century. That much importance was given to this. So that means our area got so much recognition. This equation got so much recognition. M is equal to E minus E sin. And as I told you, if you know the capital E and small e, no problem. M you can calculate. But if you know mean anomaly and small e, then calculating, because E is coming at two places, you have to have a iterative scheme. So the cos E and sin E, when x is very small, we use these formulas which we teach our students in the differential calculus itself, the beginning itself. So one of the solution, I just give you two elementary equations, because there are so many solutions to this. Just to give you an example. So when the equation is there, m is equal to E minus E sin E Kepler equation, let us assume the first approximation as m is equal to E or E is equal to m. Then you replace there by E by m. So your E1 solution becomes, you take the E1, E as you call as E1, m plus E sin E you take to the right hand side from there, and E you replace by m. So E1 becomes m plus E sin m. Now E2 becomes, now m remains same, you don't change to that. Iteration is on to the other one, because E is the small parameter. These equations can be used only when E is small, not very it's large. And we have checked 0.2, 0.3, it works easily. Up to 0.3, I have not seen any problem for this equation, because we teach our students which easily they are able to get. I have got a worked out example. I'll show you how this works nicely. Now you replace, for the second equation, m you replace by m plus E sin m, and now you use your simple sin A plus B formula, sin A cos B plus cos A sin B formula you use. So we have used this that formula, E sine m cos E sine m plus cos m E sine cos m. Now, because E is small there, we can expand with the previous those two formulas we can use. They are only valid when the x is small or E is small. So we take only, because I'm just giving you an example only up to second order, but this solution can be given even higher order terms also, E2, E3, E4, etc. And the more terms you take, that the solution becomes more accurate. But as I told you, there will be a limit after which the solution will not converge. So when we now you can see here, so the you take only now you have expanded now E cos m 1 minus E square sine square m by 2 factorial, and then you have expanded E sine m, that is E sine m minus E cube by sine cube m by 3 factorial, and now you take only E square terms. So only 3 terms will come. First m will come, and E sine m will come from the second one, and then the other one will come only E into E square, and this that is outside, and then this will come E square. I think one bracket need to be there. E square sine 2m by 2, because that cos 2 sine m is coming, 2 multiply 2 sine m cos m is sine 2m divided by 2. So this is the solution, and this solution, if you take small value of E, it works well, and we can later on check also whatever value you got values, and then you put it into the original solution and see how good they work, and I will show you also how they work. There is another method also equally simple, which also I can give you a rough idea. Let us assume E minus m to be U, and then m minus E sine E, the Kepler equation, that we can write as U is equal to, because you take to the m to other side, and the E sine m you bring to the left hand side. So U is equal to E sine m plus U. Now we can assume that U can be found in the form U is equal to, so these are all perturbation theory, U1 E plus U2 E square plus so on, and UN En, where the coefficient UN are expressible in terms of trigonometric functions of M. They are determined in a straight way by substituting the above values in this one. So left hand side you write U is equal to U1 plus U1 E plus U2 E square, etc. And then the right hand side you write the formula, sine A plus B formula, sine A cos B plus cos A sine B, and then you expand that U value you put there in this series form, and then you expand that formula again, and now you again take the coefficient you take from there. E coefficient you take left hand side to right side, you compare the coefficients. So you will get U1 is equal to sine m, U2 is equal to sine 2 m by 2, U3 is equal to 3 sine 3 m by 8 minus sine m by 8. And substituting this into defining the equation U, we ultimately find E is equal to m plus E minus E square by 8 plus E4 by 194 sine m plus E square by 2, 1 minus E square by 3, E4 by 24 sine. Like that, you get a solution. Okay. It is interesting to note that the general form of this expansion is of the form e raised to m sine km. The order of magnitude of each coefficient corresponds to the order of the Fourier component to which it belongs. It holds for many series expansion in celestial mechanics. This is the interesting method, and this works well. And if you check also on these values, it will certainly work. Other one also, if we take EQ, we can even compare both methods how they work. Now, more exact solution if we want to get, we can use Newton-Raphson's method. You calculate, which we also teach to our students, fx and f dash x, you calculate the derivative, and then you can calculate xn plus 1 is equal to xn minus fx divided by f dash x. So f and f dash function you just define x minus e sine x minus m. You take everything to the equal to 0. And this value, that the blue value is given by Danby. In one of his research papers, he gave the signum, we know signum function. If sine m is positive, then signum it is a positive value. So sign is positive in the first quadrant and second quadrant. So if your value of m is going in first quadrant or second quadrant, then we have to take a positive value. And if it is going in third quadrant or fourth quadrant, then negative value. So this value, and we can take, and m you have to take in radians, because the 0.85 into e, that is in radians, and the m what you are writing, whatever value is given to us, we convert into degrees in terms of radians. And I will give you an example. So this method works well for it's a convergence is, you see, Newton-Raphson's method, convergence is very good, and you get very even for higher eccentricity, you get very nice solutions, very good solutions you get. Now Kepler's equation, now we will use, because this equation, how to m is equal to e minus e sin e. Now I have taken a value m is equal to 80 degrees and e is equal to 0.1. Now we calculate, because we have to calculate e. We cannot calculate directly. It's a transcendental equation, and to place the e and sin is coming, you just cannot make it. So E0, let us find E0. Now m plus 0.85, same Danby's thing, into E into signum sin m. Now 80. So because sin 80 is positive, so we just write plus sign. So 80 degree we have to convert in radians. Pi by 180, 0.85 into 0.1. So that is in radians, value will come. You can convert into degrees. And then next time you write. Now this is only first estimate you have to get. Second estimate goes only by writing m plus the iteration is going, as we have seen in the analytical thing. Iteration goes only on the equation onto the second one. First one will be mean anomaly will not change. That will remain constant. So you will get, so you got your in terms of degrees you got this, and then E2 will be you write that previous value there, and you will get the E2 value, and then E3 value you will get similarly. And so when we compare this, we have compared the value what we got, E value. 80 was given to us, mean anomaly 85.71355 we got, and we have because the value which 0.85 into sin, that will be in radians, so we are converting directly into the degrees, and we got this. So this answer is quite correct, 80, and you have got right hand side your evaluated value with that equation goes 79.9999. If you take one more, maybe some more, it may go. So the difference between them will be so many zeros. And now in this, it looks we have taken 0.2, and you don't have to convert degrees and this thing directly. You can make it. See, E0 you have to use same method, Danby's method, 0.85 into E, and since 70 sin 70 is positive, so we have to take a positive sign. So you, in the second step, you can see positive sign, 0.85 into 0.2 is the eccentricity, and 1 is for the because we take only the, just to show that one has come, not the -1, and 180 by pi I have written. So directly after conversion I have put it in terms of degrees, because 70, so you got the answer in terms of degrees only. Otherwise you have to convert that in radians and then again do degrees. So directly you have done it. And then next step, 70 remains 70, and the previous value you replace there. You go on replacing the previous value to the into that equation, and nothing else you have to do. And you see E6 value. Now you can see already E5, E6, they were same. E4, there was difference only in the 6th decimal place. So even at E4, your answers will be quite good. And when we compare here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 7 zeros came. So so this iterative method, it does work 0.2 itself, and even on 0.3 it will work. So the solution of Kepler, and this is simpler. So because my students have still not learned Newton-Raphson's method in second year, this was being taught, then I thought this method is quite okay. 0.2 it works, 0.3 it works. Newton-Raphson's method can give in 2 or 3 steps itself the answer. So this is the algorithm for the Newton-Raphson's method. One can use, you can calculate f FE and F dash E, and then you calculate the F dash by this, the difference between them, and then you go on iterating them, get the new values, and then you can set a what is the kind of accuracy you need. You put some value epsilon, and you can easily get it. This user absence method we have seen, it works very well. Even when I was doing my research at that time also, this equation was coming some places. So we used to use Newton-Raphson method. So computation of orbital elements from position and velocity. Now see, this is vector. In this, only thing you will be use only vector product and scalar product, and we know vector product and scalar product. So this is for the convenience of our students. I have just kept this. When we know A and B vector, A cross B is a vector which is perpendicular to this, and it forms a right-handed coordinate system. You take your finger one, then you take A vector, V vector, and A cross B is your thumb. And A dot B is a scalar. And the way we tell our students that you will commit an error unless you do it methodically. So A cross B, and you write I, J, K, U1, U2, U3, and U4, V1, V2, V3, and do it methodically, then they will not commit error. Otherwise, the minus sign sometimes gets into problem, because people will forget whether after minus what you have to put. But here, when you have to use here also, some people can get a problem after minus putting. They may put U3 U1, then it becomes a mistake. But one may make a decision which way one has to learn. Now again, I come back to the same figure, because now we are given position and velocity, and we have to use this figure. So this figure is from that Curtis book only, which was a second edition, but same book, same is this will continue there. So small omega, capital omega, all the parameters are shown in this. And what we need to remember only these two. The angular, the H is the angular momentum, R cross V. So it is perpendicular to it is passing from the center and perpendicular to the orbital plane. And eccentricity vector passes through the perigee, the point which is nearest to the Earth. V cross H by the mu gravitational constant divide minus R vector by the magnitude of R. So the thick ones are the vectors. Now we go there. We can calculate R. We can calculate V. We can calculate radial velocity. Radial velocity is R dot V by R. So this will be whether you write V dot R or R dot V, that doesn't matter, because this is commutative. So you can calculate this value. This is important. If this is positive, then the satellite is flying away from the perigee. That means your true anomaly will be in first quadrant or second quadrant. You need to remember about VR. If VR is, because VR can be positive or negative, because it depends upon the components of R and V, because we are taking the scalar product. So if VR is less than 0, we are either in third quadrant or fourth quadrant. So we have to keep in mind when we calculate the true anomaly, which we do in the end. Okay, calculate the angular momentum R cross V. Here we have to remember that we do R cross V, not V cross R. Otherwise, the negative value will come. So R cross V, we have got the angular momentum. Calculate the magnitude of this. Now cos I. Cos I is the dot product between K vector and H vector. And K vector is 0, 0, 1. Unit vector I, J, K. They are the unit vector around towards the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So that will be K dot H by H. So because only it is 0, 0, 1, only Z component will come off for the. So Hz by H, that will be cos theta, and theta and I is equal to cos inverse. Now this I inclination can lie only between 0 and 1. So we do not have to find any other condition. If this is negative quantity, your angle is in second quadrant. If it is positive, if Hz is negative, second quadrant. If Hz is positive, because H will be always positive. So you are in first quadrant. So one of the parameter we have calculated. Now you calculate the n vector. What is n vector? N vector is the, this is, I have given a figure there also, but you can see here in the bigger figure also, you can see. N vector is you k cross h. If you take the k you take and then h, then n, that n is the intersection of the line of intersection of the xy plane and the orbital plane. So that n vector will be k cross h. K cross h, and since it is lying in xy plane, its z component will not come. So you calculate the k cross h. That we have to be careful that we calculate k cross h. If we calculate h cross k, then we go to the other side, and entire thing will become mistake. And then we need to remember here one more additional thing is, then you remember the ny component. See, the n will have to nx I plus nyj. Now, if ny is positive towards the j-axis, then your capital omega will be either in first quadrant or second quadrant. But in case your ny is negative, then you are going to the other side. Then your capital omega will be in third quadrant or fourth quadrant. And nx will give you another idea. The components itself will give you by seeing the components of the nx and ny. If nx is positive, you are in first quadrant or fourth quadrant, because cos positive is in first quadrant or fourth quadrant. So with these two, you can find out the unique quadrant from the sign of nx and ny. So your capital omega again depends upon there is a worked example which I discussed with you. Then you will be understanding more, because you are studying, some of you may be seeing first time, so it will be a little this thing, but when you see it little carefully again, it is not a major issue. This small omega is n dot e, because how small omega comes, argument of parity comes is a bigger figure only I'll show you. See, small omega comes between the E vector and N vector. So when you take the dot product, you will get N by N mod E mod into cos of omega. And that cos omega only we are calculating. N vector we know. It has got only two components. E vector we have to calculate. It may have all three. And E vector, I told you this is a E vector. Here you will have to calculate, because H vector you are already calculating, and V vector is already given to you. So one more V cross H you will have to calculate. So all their components, you will have to divide each component by mu, that is 398600. And all R components, you will have to divide by the magnitude R. R also you are knowing, already you are calculating. So this E vector, once you know the E vector, then you know here only two components will come, because N vector has only nx and ny. So your z component there will not come, but there we will have to see. Please see this, the component of Ez, because E may have all three components, Ex, Ey, Ez. If Ez is positive, your capital omega can come in first quadrant or second quadrant, because Ez is towards k direction, okay? But if Ez component is negative, it goes towards the negative direction of the z axis. Then your small omega will be either in third quadrant or fourth quadrant. So you essentially you have to remember two things about ny and about Ez, and theta, the radial velocity for theta it comes. So these three will give you the thing, and because I does not need any additional condition, because inclination changes only from 0 to 180. So capital omega you already got, and here also same thing. So those two quadrants will be decided. In case your this value is negative, so your omega is going the cos omega is going either second quadrant or third quadrant. If it is positive, it is going first quadrant or fourth quadrant. And if Ez is positive, you are in first quadrant or second quadrant. If If it is negative, you are going in third quadrant forward. So uniqueness of the quadrant you can define from those two conditions. So your omega also comes from there. Now left is theta. Theta already half the thing we already calculated earlier. Now we know R is already given to us and E we have calculated. So E dot R, that is the dot product. This will be the all three components may be there, unless it's a very special condition. Unless R is given two components, but we normally we will give all three components. So E dot R by ER. So when you calculate it, again same thing. And if it is positive, first quadrant, fourth quadrant, and if it is negative, second quadrant, third quadrant, and your V R dot V, that radial velocity, if it is greater than 0, you are in first quadrant or second quadrant, and if it is negative, third quadrant, fourth quadrant. So with that, you are able to calculate theta. So these are the elements, because H is only calculated, and other parameters are can be easily derived once you know those parameters. This is a worked example given, that also quickly I will explain to you. R and V are given, radial velocity, and this is given in Curtis book. R and V you calculate, and VR you calculate, R dot V by R. So since it is greater than 0, so you know true anomaly will lie between first quadrant or second quadrant, between 0 and 180 it will lie. That we have already now H vector we have calculated, R cross V. So now the magnitude also we have calculated. Cos I is K cross H by H. Now since it was negative, so we got the value in second quadrant, 153.2 degrees. And now N we have calculated, K cross H. It has got both components negative. As I told you, if Nx is negative, your cos will go in second quadrant or third quadrant, because cos is negative in second quadrant and third quadrant, and Ny was negative, so it goes in third quadrant or fourth quadrant. So you will get into third quadrant. So your answer, you can see 255.3, that is in third quadrant. So that comes from there. And now E vector, you see the same thing, whatever I told you, when you simplify this can come in this form, but you can directly calculate from there as well as, or you can do, but there is a derivation is same. If you derive from there, you will get this in, and this is also okay, because V square is known to you there. This is in scalar. So here what happens is, when we calculate this, these values are already known to us. V square is known to us, mu is anyway there, R also we know, because we are already calculating there. R vector is given to us, and V dot R also we are calculating there in radial velocity. So we have to only substitute their values, and then you have to do only the vector addition, subtraction, and we got E vector. Now E vector we got, and since Ez is greater than 0, so your small omega will lie in first quadrant or second quadrant. You can see there Ez, Ex is negative, Ey is negative, Ez is positive. So that lies in the since it is positive, so your small omega will be in first quadrant or second quadrant. And now here itself we get that information for us. And you got, then you square each components and then take the square root, and that is the eccentricity. And as I told you, omega became a positive value, so you got first quadrant, fourth quadrant, and Ez greater than 0, so first quadrant, second quadrant, so you got the answer in first quadrant. That was the common quadrant. And again here theta positive, first quadrant, fourth quadrant, and because your radial velocity was greater than 0, so your answer is in first quadrant, because it says first quadrant or second quadrant. So common value is first quadrant or second quadrant. And other parameters, perigee, apogee. At perigee, your true anomalies is, see, also we have H square is equal to A into 1 minus E square. When R I was doing, R was A into 1 minus E square. We have the relation between angular momentum, H square is equal to, this is also constant value, because A and E are constant. So this can be written in this form also. And at perigee, theta is true anomaly is 0. At apogee, true anomaly is 180. So you can calculate perigee and apogee radius by this equation, use of this equation. And when you add them and divide by 2, you can get the semi-major axis. Okay, and period is by Kepler's third law, 2 pi a raised to 3 by 2 by square root mu. Yeah. So that will come in seconds, and then you can convert either in minutes or hours. But answer will come in seconds. So that will, you can tell. Then I had just for practice, I have given one, this value, these are all correct values. I have verified this first answer. R and V are given, but they are all coming in first quadrant. I is in first quadrant, capital omega in first quadrant, small omega. So this is relatively a simpler question, because everything is going in first quadrant. But other value, other the questions, it may be different, this thing. So today's thing I have completed in 1 hour.